Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, David here, and welcome back to another Metaphor ReFantazio video. And I'm very excited for this one because I asked you guys after my experience of Metaphor ReFantazio, which is me playing the first 3 hours of the game, do you have any questions? And I'll try to answer as many as I can. Now, if you want to have more details than what is discussed about Metaphor ReFantazio in today's video, you can check out my full preview, which is almost 20 minutes long. I uploaded that 2 days ago. The link will be in the description, so make sure you check that out if you want a lot more details and my in-depth thoughts for the game. Now, you guys had a bunch of questions, lots of good questions too. Obviously, I only played 3 hours. Everything was like very structured. It was the early part of the game, the beginning of the game, so there won't be any big spoilers here. And you guys asked some questions that are not related to Metaphor, stuff like ATLUS decisions, projects, future games, etc. Obviously, I didn't get any information from ATLUS in regards to those projects, and even if I did, I wouldn't be allowed to talk about that, so I'm sorry. That's why your questions are not here. Plus, there was a lot of repetitive questions, so that's also another reason why some of y'all's questions won't be in today's video. And there is also a bunch of great questions that I simply don't have the answer to since, again, I only played 3 hours of the game. Now let's get right into it with you guys' questions, and the first one comes from Sevora LF asking, what are some unique aspects of Metaphor that you experienced which sets it apart from ATLUS's other primary franchises? From what I can tell, the medieval vibe is a big one. Do you really feel the impact of the setting? That is a very good question that, again, I'm going very in depth about this topic in my preview, but clearly the setting and tone of Metaphor is indeed very different than anything else ATLUS. It doesn't feel like Persona in that regards. It doesn't feel like mainline Shin Megami Tensei in that regards either. It is very grandiose. The architecture specifically is clearly giving me medieval vibes. The way that characters are dressed, the way that character talks, because the characters, they're voiced, most of them are voiced, at least the important ones. You go through the city, you hear people talk, the way that people are acting. It is year 785 in Metaphor ReFantazio, and yes, it does feel like it does sound like it, and it does look like it as well. So, great question here from Sevora, thank you. The next one here comes from .fearlowpwned. What is the day-to-day time passage like? Does it feel natural? The one gripe I had with Persona was I felt like I had to min-max every day. I didn't feel like I could just do what I wanted. So now this one, if you haven't watched my preview, I highly recommend you check it out, but I did ask details about the calendar system and the day-to-day system to the developers that were there physically in New York City during the preview event, and they gave me additional details that I'm willing to talk about. But I do want to say that, again, in the first 3 hours of the game, the calendar system isn't very prominent. Obviously, it's there, you can see you moving from a day to another, but you don't have activities to do that will spend time, at least in the first 3 hours. So I don't have anything to say about that, or I cannot share my opinion about that, sadly. Now, what the developers told me is that it's kind of different than Persona's calendar system in the fact that they want you to feel like this is a journey, that you're going through a journey, that, hey, if you are traveling from one point in the map to a very far location, it is going to take a lot of time. So you're going to have a lot of time to spend through activities, through bonding events, through crafting material, etc. Now, if you move from a location to another location, which is not that far off, well, then you're not going to have a lot of time to spend, you know? So it is structured differently than the Persona calendar system from my understanding, but I share your questions, .fear, and I really want to hear more about this because from what I've heard the developers tell me, it sounds awesome. But I want to see how it plays and how it feels when we play it, right? Next up is from Emilia here asking, does it feel more open exploration-wise than Persona? And to that I have a simple thing to say. It doesn't feel that open, I'll be honest. There is some big open sections, right? When you first start the game, you land in some sort of desert and it is very large. It's a large area, you can move around and there's stuff to do, you know? There is a lot of these areas, so it's certainly not... I'm gonna use Persona 5 and SMT5 Vengeance, for example. It is way more like an SMT5 Vengeance than it is a Persona 5. It is not small sections, small locations. Cities and towns kind of are, but even then they're bigger than what you have in Persona 5. It's way more along the lines of areas that you're gonna find in SMT5 Vengeance, right? It's more open in that regards, but it's not an open world game at all. So I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Yayo77 asking, would you consider this game to be Persona or SMT? I'm curious on how you felt playing the game. Now for the second section of your question, I'm gonna link my preview, check that out, that explains in depth what I felt about the game. But for your first question, would you consider to be more Persona than SMT? It's really hard to say. There is some stuff that clearly is Persona, like the bonding events, which then again, I didn't experience a ton of them, so are they social links? Kind of, but it's hard to say for now. The rewards that you gain from those are very different than what you gain from social links, so it's hard to answer, but that is very much a Persona thing. The awakening, so when you awaken to a first archetype with a character, it's a Persona awakening. I put a side-by-side comparison of Joker's awakening versus the protagonist's awakening of the Seeker archetype in Metaphor. That's very similar. That's straight out of Persona. Other than that, it is really its own thing. Now, the SMT side of things comes from the battle system. Now, you guys know Metaphor, there's a hybrid combat system, but when you are in a turn-based combat system, it is your press turn combat system from Nocturne. It's press turn, very much. With a twist, there's placements on field, there's a formation system, there's a couple of twists, but it's very much the press turn combat system from SMT and Persona. So it's grabbing from both series, but it's confusing everything together and making it its own thing. It doesn't feel like I'm playing medieval Persona. It doesn't feel like I'm playing some sort of medieval SMT either. I'm playing a game that is in a medieval setting, clearly from the developers of both Persona and SMT, and it shows. I hope I'm making sense here. Next question comes from Lezo the Gamer Boy asking, what is the difficulty compared to Persona and SMT? Also, why can't they just release the gameplay demo publicly? Like, come on, it would do wonders to release it. It would generate so much hype for the game, and people who are on the edge of getting it can try and decide if they want to buy it or not. Now for the demo side of things, in your question, Lezo, 100% they should release a demo. That would sell copies. Now for your question, difficulty, I said it in my preview, I played the first 3 hours of the game on normal. I died once, and it was because I was not supposed to fight this specific enemy. I was supposed to flee the scene. The rest, I beat easily. So on normal, very easy. Very much Persona more than SMT, at least modern Persona more than SMT. It is very simple, but again, I am huge into ATLUS RPGs, so it doesn't mean that you can auto battle everything on normal. I don't think that's the case, but on normal, as someone who's accustomed to ATLUS RPGs, the press turn combat system, it was very easy. So I might try to beat the game on hard when it comes out, because from what I've played, it seemed pretty easy. So you can try hard, and hey, I had other content creators near me. Gnarly was sitting right next to me, and he was playing it on hard mode, and if I recall correctly, he didn't die either. So again, it's the first 3 hours of the game, so take that as you will. The next question is from Dowad Yudo asking, I'm curious about the combat system. Is it taking more from SMT or Persona? From what I could see, it looked more like the press turn system than the one more, but I'd love to hear how you felt from it. So yes, as I said a little bit earlier, clearly it's the press turn combat system from Shin Megami Tensei. That is what's in the game, but there is some twist. There is some important twist. Do not underestimate the twist that comes from archetypes. Full customization is possible. Again, there's a formation system. You have allies that can be placed in the front row that are going to deal more melee damage, but they're going to take more damage as well. You have characters that can be placed on the back row, which won't be receiving as much damage because they're in the back row, but they won't be dealing as much damage either. And then there's some strategies for which archetypes you have equipped. Obviously, a healer is going to do well in the back row versus the front row. So I'm really curious about the importance of this formation system, but that is very much in the press turn combat system that you're going to find in games like SMT3, for example. So the final question for today's video, thank you so much to everyone who asked the question. This final one comes from Mario PKM and Zelda asking, would a fan of Persona be disappointed if they go into this game thinking it will be Persona but fantasy instead of something else entirely? I'll be honest, if that's what you're expecting, I do think that you're going to be disappointed. It depends on precisely what you're looking for, but if you are really expecting a full-on Persona game, but in a medieval setting, you'll be disappointed. There's no personas. Social links are kind of different, as I explained before. The calendar system seems to be very different than the calendar system in Persona. There is no romance options in Metaphor ReFantazio, and a lot of people are into Persona for the social interactions, for the romance, and the emphasis on characters. So that is not a thing in Metaphor. Will a Persona fan enjoy Metaphor? Probably, but if you are expecting a full-on Persona experience, I do think that you're gonna be disappointed. It takes from Persona, but it's not Persona. Reviewers will tell you it is, but it's not. I can tell you it is not. There is enough differences to make it feel like its own thing, but it's not too surprising when you hear that, hey, the director of the game worked on all modern Persona games. It's not a shock. Thank you all so much for asking questions about Metaphor ReFantazio. There will be another opportunity for you guys to ask questions because I want to host a live stream where I am simply live. We'll listen to music, we'll chat with you guys, and I will be answering as many questions as I can because this game, you guys, is so freaking good, and I want you guys to be confident when pre-ordering it or when buying it in October. I know there's so much else coming out around it. You don't have to be there day one if you don't want to, obviously, but to me, the world stops when Metaphor comes out October 11th. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you liked it. I certainly enjoyed recording it, and I loved my time with Metaphor. I hope you have a great day, y'all. Bye.